A single dad mechanic fixed a rich girl's bike, but when her billionaire mom showed up with a thank you gift that shocked him, hidden secrets from the past explode into the present. Will this gift unite two broken families, or tear them apart forever? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Main Street as Jack Turner wiped his grease-stained hands on a red shop rag. The familiar scent of motor oil and metal hung in the air of his small garage, a place that had been his sanctuary for the past decade. He glanced at the old clock mounted on the wall, nearly closing time. "Almost done with your masterpiece there, sweetie?" Jack called out to Lily, who sat cross-legged at her little desk in the corner. The workspace was her special spot, complete with scattered colored pencils and papers covered in bright drawings. Lily looked up, her pigtails bouncing as she nodded enthusiastically. "Almost, Daddy. I'm drawing our house, but with a rainbow over it." Jack smiled, his heart warming at his daughter's endless creativity. Even after the longest days of fixing engines and dealing with difficult customers, Lily's presence never failed to lift his spirits. He was about to suggest they start packing up when the distinct purr of a luxury engine caught his attention. A sleek black car, the kind that probably cost more than his entire garage, glided to a stop outside. The back door opened, and out stepped a teenage girl in designer clothes, her face pinched with worry. She was pulling a bicycle that had clearly seen better days. "Excuse me?" the girl called out, her voice polite, but carrying a hint of frustration. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but my bike chain." She gestured helplessly at the tangled mess of metal. Jack straightened up, automatically shifting into problem-solving mode. "No bother at all. Bring it on in, and we'll take a look." The girl, who introduced herself as Chloe, wheeled her bike into the garage. Jack noticed her taking in the humble surroundings, the worn tools hanging on pegboards, the faded calendar from 3 years ago, the small collection of family photos near his workbench. Her designer sneakers seemed out of place on the oil-stained concrete floor. Lily, curious about their unexpected visitor, abandoned her drawing and wandered over. "Hi, I'm Lily," she announced, holding up her latest artwork. "Do you like to draw too?" A genuine smile broke through Chloe's worried expression. "I love to draw, though I'm not very good at it." She studied Lily's picture with interest. "That's really pretty. Is that your house?" "Uh-huh. And that's me and Daddy in the front yard." While the girls chatted, Jack examined the bike chain. It was a simple fix, something he could do in his sleep. He grabbed his tools and set to work, listening to the easy conversation flowing between Lily and Chloe. "So you just draw whatever you want?" Chloe asked, sounding almost wistful. Lily nodded vigorously. "Daddy says art comes from the heart, so there's no wrong way to do it." Jack glanced up to see Chloe's expression soften, something shifting in her eyes. It was a look he recognized, the same one Lily got when she talked about her mother, a mixture of longing and something unspoken. "There we go," Jack announced after a few minutes, wiping a bit of grease from the newly repaired chain. "Good as new. Just try to avoid those deeper puddles next time. Chains don't like too much water." Chloe blinked in surprise. "That's it? But—" She reached for her phone, presumably to arrange payment. "How much do I owe you?" Jack waved her off. "Don't worry about it. Just a simple fix. But I have to pay you something," Chloe insisted, her brow furrowing. "The last time my bike needed repairs, it cost hundreds of dollars." Jack couldn't help but chuckle. "Sounds like someone saw you coming." "Really, it's fine. Consider it my good deed for the day." Outside, the chauffeur shifted impatiently in the driver's seat of the waiting car. Chloe glanced back, then turned to Jack with a mixture of confusion and gratitude on her face. Thank you. Really." She looked down at Lily, who was holding out one of her drawings. "Is this for me?" "Yep. It's you and your bike, see?" Lily pointed to the stick figures she'd quickly sketched. Chloe carefully took the paper, handling it like it was made of gold. "Thank you, Lily. I'll hang it in my room." She tested her bike's pedals, smiling when they moved smoothly. "This is really kind of you both." Jack shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. "Just helping out a kid with a broken bike. Nothing special about that. Chloe's eyes met his, and for a moment, there was something eerily familiar about her gaze. But before he could place it, she was walking her bike toward the waiting car, the chauffeur hurrying to help her load it into the trunk. "Bye, Chloe," Lily called out, waving enthusiastically. "Come back and draw with me sometime." Chloe waved back, then disappeared into the car's tinted interior. As the vehicle pulled away, Jack felt an odd twinge of nostalgia, though he couldn't say why. Something about the girl's mannerisms, perhaps, or the way she'd looked at him with such surprise when he'd refused payment. "She was nice," Lily declared, returning to her desk to gather her art supplies. "I like her." "Yeah," Jack agreed absently, watching the luxury car's taillights disappear around the corner. "She seems like a good kid." The encounter left him with a strange feeling, like a half-remembered dream. But he pushed it aside, focusing instead on helping Lily pack up her crayons and closing down the garage for the night. Whatever it was about Chloe that seemed familiar, it probably didn't matter. In a town this small, paths were bound to cross again sooner or later. "Ready to head home, kiddo?" he asked, holding out his hand to Lily. She grabbed it, swinging their arms as they walked toward the door. "Can we have spaghetti for dinner?" "Sure thing, princess." Jack flicked off the lights, letting the garage fall into shadows. Another day done, another stranger helped, another moment shared with his daughter, and that was enough for him. The morning sun streamed through the garage's dusty windows, casting warm patches of light across the small breakfast table Jack had set up years ago. It wasn't fancy, just a fold-out card table with two mismatched chairs, but it served its purpose. Every morning, he and Lily shared breakfast here before the workday began, a ritual that kept them connected despite their busy lives. Lily munched on her cereal, occasionally picking out the marshmallows first, while Jack sipped his coffee from his favorite chipped mug. The newspaper lay spread between them, though Jack was more focused on his daughter's animated description of her latest art project for school. "And Mrs. Peterson says we can use glitter this time," Lily explained, her eyes bright with excitement. "But only if we promise not to spill it everywhere like Tommy did last week." Jack chuckled. "Well, that's a relief. I'm still finding sparkles in your backpack from the Valentine's Day incident." The familiar rumble of an engine drew Jack's attention to the garage's open doors. A black luxury car, the same one from yesterday, pulled up smoothly outside. The morning light gleamed off its polished surface, making it look almost out of place against the worn concrete of the garage's entrance. A woman stepped out, and Jack's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. She moved with natural grace, her designer outfit somehow managing to look both expensive and understated. Her presence commanded attention without demanding it, the mark of someone used to influence but not flaunting it. "That's the fancy car from yesterday," Lily whispered loudly, abandoning her cereal to watch their visitor with undisguised curiosity. The woman approached the garage entrance, her heels clicking against the concrete. Despite her elegant appearance, her smile was genuine and warm. "Mr. Turner? I'm Evelyn Harrington, Chloe's mother. I hope I'm not interrupting your morning." Jack quickly stood, wiping his hands on his jeans out of habit. "No, not at all. We were just having breakfast. Would you like some coffee?" "That's very kind, but I won't take much of your time." Evelyn's gaze softened as it fell on Lily, who was now pretending to be deeply interested in her cereal while stealing glances at their visitor. "I wanted to thank you personally for helping Chloe yesterday. She told me how kind you were." "It was nothing really, just a simple bike chain fix," Jack said, feeling somewhat self-conscious about the modest surroundings. Evelyn reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a cream-colored envelope. "Nevertheless, I'd like to show my appreciation." Jack's posture stiffened slightly. "That's really not necessary, Mrs. Harrington. I was happy to help." "Please," she said, holding out the envelope with a gentle insistence. "At least look at it before you decide." With reluctance, Jack accepted the envelope. When he opened it, his eyes widened. Inside wasn't a check, as he'd expected, but documents detailing a scholarship fund for Lily. "This island," he trailed off, scanning the papers with disbelief. "A scholarship fund for your daughter's education?" Evelyn completed his thought. "Chloe mentioned how talented she is at art. Every child deserves the chance to pursue their dreams, don't you think? Jack looked over at Lily, who was now openly watching them both, her spoon forgotten in her bowl. The amount listed on the papers could change his daughter's future: college, art school, opportunities he'd never dreamed he could provide on a mechanic's salary. "Mrs. Harrington, this is too much. I can't accept this," Jack protested, though his hands clutched the papers a little tighter. "Please, call me Evelyn," she said warmly. "And yes, you can accept it. It's not charity, Mr. Turner. It's gratitude, from one parent to another." Her eyes met his with understanding. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness deserve the biggest thanks. Lily chose that moment to pipe up. "Did you like the drawing Chloe took with her? I gave her one of mine." Evelyn's face lit up. "The Rainbow House? It's lovely. Chloe has it on her desk now." Jack watched as his daughter beamed with pride, and something in his resolve wavered. The scholarship wasn't just money. It was possibility, opportunity, a chance for Lily to explore her talents without limits. "I don't know what to say," he admitted finally. "Say you'll accept it for Lily's sake," Evelyn suggested gently. "The fund is already set up. All it needs is your signature." Jack looked down at the papers again, then at his daughter's hopeful face. "Thank you," he said at last, his voice rough with emotion. "This island. Incredibly generous." Evelyn's smile widened. "Wonderful. My lawyer will be in touch with the details." She glanced at her watch. "I should go. Thank you again, Mr. Turner, for everything." As she turned to leave, Jack noticed movement across the street. Several townspeople had gathered outside the diner, watching the scene unfold. Mrs. Peterson from the flower shop was whispering to Bob from the hardware store, their faces a mix of curiosity and judgment. Jack's shoulders slumped slightly as he watched Evelyn's car pull away. The envelope in his hands felt both lighter than air and heavier than lead. He could already imagine the rumors that would start spreading through their small town. The mechanic and the billionaire, a scholarship that seemed to come out of nowhere. He looked at Lily, who had returned to her cereal, humming happily to herself, blissfully unaware of the attention their morning visitor had attracted. Across the street, the small crowd of onlookers began to disperse, but Jack could see them casting glances back at the garage as they walked away. He let out a quiet sigh, tucking the envelope into his back pocket. The evening sun cast long shadows through the windows of Mary's Diner, where the red vinyl booth squeaked softly as customers shifted in their seats. Jack and Lily sat in their usual corner spot, the one with the slightly wobbly table that Jack had offered to fix countless times. The familiar smell of coffee and grilled onions filled the air, mixing with the quiet murmur of conversation. Lily colored happily on her paper placemat while waiting for her grilled cheese sandwich, her crayons scattered across the table. Jack absently stirred his coffee, his shoulders tense as snippets of conversation from nearby booths drifted over. "Did you hear about that fancy car at Turner's garage this morning?" A woman's voice carried from two booths over. "That rich widow from the city. Always knew he was struggling with the garage, but going after wealthy women? That's a new low," another voice added with a disapproving click of the tongue. Jack's hand tightened around his coffee cup. He glanced at Lily, relieved to see her still absorbed in her drawing, seemingly oblivious to the whispers around them. Sandra, their regular waitress, approached with their dinner plates. She set down Lily's grilled cheese sandwich, cut diagonally just the way she liked it, and Jack's turkey club. Her kind eyes met Jack's, and she gave him a reassuring smile. "Don't you pay them any mind, Jack Turner," Sandra said quietly, making sure only he could hear. "Some folks in this town got nothing better to do than talk." "Thanks, Sandra." Jack managed a small smile. "Guess news travels fast around here." "Too fast, if you ask me," Sandra replied, shaking her head. "And usually with only half the truth." She turned to Lily with a brighter expression. "How's that masterpiece coming along, sweetheart?" Lily held up her drawing proudly. "It's our garage. See? There's Daddy fixing cars, and that's me helping." "It's beautiful, honey," Sandra praised, then headed off to tend to other customers. More whispers filtered through the diner. Taking advantage of her generosity. Probably planned it all along. Lily looked up from her sandwich, her forehead wrinkled in confusion. "Daddy, why are those people being mean? You only fixed a bike." Jack's heart clenched at the innocent question. He reached across the table and squeezed her small hand. "Sometimes, honey, people just like to talk about things they don't understand." "But you help people all the time," Lily persisted, her blue eyes troubled. "Like when you fixed Mrs. Johnson's car and didn't make her pay because her husband was sick." "That's right," Jack said softly. "And we help people because it's the right thing to do, not because we want anything in return. Remember that, okay?" Lily nodded, but her usual cheerful expression had dimmed slightly. Jack hated seeing that shadow cross her face, hated that the town's gossip had touched her innocent world. Sandra returned to refill their drinks, deliberately speaking louder than necessary. "You know, Jack, what you did for that young girl yesterday was real decent. This town could use more people willing to help others without expecting anything in return." Her words carried to the nearby booths, and the whispers temporarily subsided. Jack gave her a grateful look, and she winked back before moving on to other tables. They finished their dinner quietly, Lily occasionally showing Jack new additions to her drawing. As they stood to leave, several pairs of eyes followed them to the door. Jack placed a protective hand on Lily's shoulder, guiding her through the diner. Back home, in their modest two-bedroom house behind the garage, Jack went through their usual bedtime routine. He helped Lily brush her teeth, listened to her prayers, and tucked her into bed with her favorite stuffed elephant. "Daddy?" Lily's voice was small in the dimly lit room. "Are you sad about what those people said?" Jack sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her blanket. "No, sweetheart. What matters is that we know the truth, right?" "Right," Lily agreed, hugging her elephant closer. "And the truth is, you're the best daddy in the whole world." Jack's throat tightened with emotion. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "And you're the best daughter in the whole world. Sweet dreams, princess." After Lily fell asleep, Jack stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the quiet street. The streetlights cast pools of yellow light on the empty sidewalks, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. His reflection in the glass looked tired, worried. He thought about the scholarship offer from Evelyn Harrington, still sitting unopened in his jacket pocket. It could secure Lily's future, give her opportunities he could only dream of providing. But the town's reaction to one simple act of kindness made him wonder, what would they say if they knew about the envelope? How much harder would the whispers become? The street outside remained peaceful, but Jack's mind was anything but quiet. He watched a few cars pass by, their headlights briefly illuminating Lily's room before fading away. In the soft glow of her nightlight, he could see her sleeping peacefully, untouched for now by the complications of adult life. He reached up and drew the curtains closed, determined to shield her from the prying eyes and wagging tongues of their small town for as long as he could. The Saturday morning sun warmed the playground at Cedar Park, where children's laughter mixed with the rhythmic squeak of swing sets. Jack Turner sat on a weathered wooden bench, watching Lily pedal her small pink bicycle around the paved path. Her dark pigtails bounced with each rotation of the wheels, matching the determined look of concentration on her face. "Daddy, look! No hands!" Lily called out, promptly grabbing the handlebars again when the bike wobbled. "Careful, sweetheart," Jack said, his voice carrying both pride and concern. He'd spent weeks teaching her to ride without training wheels, his hands steady on the back of her seat until she found her balance. A familiar figure caught his eye. The teenage girl from the garage, Chloe, was walking toward the playground with an older woman Jack assumed was her nanny. Chloe wore simple jeans and a t-shirt today, looking more like a regular kid than the polished young lady who'd visited his garage. Lily noticed them too and waved enthusiastically. "Hi, you're the girl with the broken bike!" Chloe's face lit up with recognition. "And you're the awesome artist from the garage." She turned to her nanny. "Can I ride my bike with her?" The nanny nodded, her kind face crinkling with a smile. "Of course, dear. Just stay where I can see you." Jack shifted on the bench, making room as the nanny approached. "Good morning," he said. "I'm Jack Turner." "Margaret Walsh," the nanny replied, settling beside him. "Chloe's told me all about how you fixed her bike. She was quite impressed." On the path, Chloe had already retrieved her bicycle. a sleek purple model that probably cost more than Jack's monthly mortgage payment. But as she rode beside Lily, the price tag seemed to fade away. They were just two girls enjoying a beautiful morning. "Want to race to the water fountain?" Lily challenged, and Chloe's eager "yes" echoed across the park. Margaret chuckled. It's nice to see Chloe like this. She doesn't get many chances to just be a regular teenager. Jack watched as the girls circled the playground, their laughter carried on the morning breeze. "Must be tough, growing up with all that pressure." "Miss Evelyn does her best," Margaret said, her tone protective but honest. "But yes, it can be isolating. Most of Chloe's activities are scheduled and supervised. Private tennis lessons, French tutoring, charity galas." The girls had abandoned their bikes near the bench and were now sitting cross-legged in the grass. Lily had pulled out her ever-present sketchbook, and Chloe leaned in close, clearly fascinated. "You're really good," Chloe exclaimed, pointing at something on the page. "I love to draw too, but I mostly have to do it between lessons." "I draw every day," Lily said proudly. "Daddy got me special pencils for my birthday." Jack smiled, remembering how Lily's face had lit up at the simple set of colored pencils. She'd treated them like treasure, carefully arranging them by color in an old tin box. "Can I try?" Chloe asked, and Lily tore out a clean page, handing it over with one of her precious pencils. The girls bent their heads together, sketching and giggling. Chloe showed Lily how to draw better flowers, while Lily taught Chloe her secret technique for drawing cats. Their differences in background melted away in the simple joy of creating together. "You drew a unicorn?" Lily gasped, admiring Chloe's work. "It looks like it's dancing." "You can keep it," Chloe said, carefully tearing out the page. "Friends share their art, right?" Jack noticed the way Chloe said "friends," like it was something rare and precious. Despite her privileged life, or perhaps because of it, she seemed hungry for genuine connection. A sleek black car pulled up to the park's entrance, and Evelyn Harrington stepped out, elegant even in casual weekend wear. She paused for a moment, taking in the scene before her. Her daughter sprawled in the grass beside Lily, both of them surrounded by scattered papers covered in colorful drawings. "Mommy!" Chloe called out, waving. "Come see what we made." Evelyn approached the group, her heels sinking slightly into the soft ground. "Hello, Jack," she said warmly. "What a lovely surprise." "Mrs. Harrington," Jack nodded, standing out of habit. "Look at these wonderful drawings," Evelyn said, kneeling carefully to examine the artwork. "You girls are quite the artists." "Chloe's really good at drawing unicorns," Lily announced. "And guess what? She likes raspberry popsicles too, just like me." "Can Chloe come over sometime?" Lily asked, looking between Jack and Evelyn with hopeful eyes. "I want to show her my special drawing spot in the backyard." A moment of silence followed, heavy with unspoken complications. But Evelyn's smile was genuine as she looked at the two girls, their hands stained with colored pencil marks. "That's very kind of you to invite her," Evelyn said. She glanced at Jack, something uncertain in her expression. "Perhaps we can arrange something." Chloe clutched her new drawing to her chest, trying to hide her eagerness but failing. Jack recognized the look. It was the same one Lily wore when she really wanted something but was afraid to hope too hard. "Yeah," Jack found himself saying. "We could work something out." The girls exchanged excited grins, and Chloe carefully tucked Lily's drawing into her bag. "I'll put it right on my wall," she promised. "Come along now, Chloe," Evelyn said gently. "We have that lunch appointment." Chloe's shoulders dropped slightly, but she stood and dusted off her jeans. "Thanks for letting me draw with you, Lily. It was really fun." "Thank you for the company," Jack said to Margaret as she gathered their belongings. The nanny smiled warmly in return. As the Harringtons walked away, Lily waved until they reached their car. "Daddy," she said, turning to Jack with serious eyes. "Chloe's really nice. She doesn't act fancy at all." Jack watched the black car pull away, thinking about the longing he'd seen in Chloe's eyes. Not for expensive things, but for simple moments like this. Grass-stained knees and shared drawings, laughter and friendship without expectations. "No, sweetheart," he agreed softly. "She sure doesn't." The autumn breeze rustled through the open windows of Jack's modest two-bedroom house, carrying the sweet scent of apple pie from Mrs. Peterson's bakery down the street. Inside the cozy living room, Lily and Chloe sat cross-legged on the worn but clean carpet, their sketchbooks spread out before them like treasured maps. "Your house is so nice," Chloe said, running her fingers along the soft fabric of the second-hand couch behind her. "It feels like a real home." Her designer clothes looked out of place against the simple furnishings, but her smile was genuine as she took in the family photos on the walls and the crayon drawings stuck to the refrigerator with magnetic letters. "Thanks," Lily beamed, her ponytail bouncing as she showed Chloe her latest drawing. "Look, I drew Daddy fixing cars." The paper showed stick figures surrounded by what looked like colorful boxes with wheels. From the kitchen, Jack could hear their chatter as he arranged cookies on a plate and poured 2 glasses of milk. The sound of the girls' laughter made his heart light. It had been too long since Lily had a friend over. Most parents in town kept their distance after his wife passed, as if grief might be catching. "Your dad's really nice," Chloe said, her voice softening as she sketched with precise strokes. Her drawing was more sophisticated, a detailed portrait of a flower that looked almost real. "Mom talks about him all the time now." "Really?" Lily scooted closer, intrigued. "What does she say?" Jack paused by the kitchen counter, trying not to eavesdrop but curious despite himself. The mention of Evelyn made his stomach do a strange flip. He hadn't been able to stop thinking about her since that day at the park, though he tried to push those thoughts away. "Well," Chloe's voice dropped to a whisper, but in the quiet house her words carried clearly to the kitchen. "Mommy says your dad is my daddy." The plate slipped from Jack's hands, shattering against the linoleum floor with a crash that seemed to echo through the entire house. Cookies scattered everywhere as he stood frozen, his mind reeling from those impossible words. "Daddy?" Lily called out, worried. "Are you okay?" But Jack couldn't answer. His hands gripped the counter edge as memories rushed back. Summer nights from what felt like another lifetime. A young Evelyn with dreams bigger than their small town. Stolen kisses behind the high school bleachers. Promises that seemed unbreakable until the day she left without explanation. In the sudden silence, he could hear shuffling from the living room. When he finally managed to turn around, Chloe stood in the kitchen doorway, her face pale and nervous. She looked so much like her mother it made his chest ache, but now he could see other things too, the shape of her eyes, the stubborn set of her jaw. His own features, staring back at him. "I'm sorry," Chloe whispered, biting her lip. "I wasn't supposed to say anything. Mom's going to be so mad at me." Her fingers twisted the hem of her expensive sweater, a gesture so familiar it took his breath away. He used to fidget with his clothes the same way when he was nervous. Lily appeared beside Chloe, looking between them with confused eyes. "Daddy? What's wrong?" Jack tried to speak, but no words came. His world had tilted on its axis, everything he thought he knew rearranging itself around this new reality. 14 years. Evelyn had kept this secret for 14 years. The broken plate lay scattered at his feet, the cookies strewn across the floor like the pieces of his past he'd thought long buried. But they weren't buried anymore. They were standing right in front of him in the form of a teenage girl who had his mother's chin and his father's height and a talent for art that must have skipped a generation. His daughter. He had another daughter. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the heavy silence. Outside, a car drove past, its radio playing faintly through the open window. Normal sounds from a normal afternoon that suddenly felt anything but normal. Chloe took a small step backward, uncertainty written across her face. Should I call my mom to pick me up?" The question snapped Jack back to the present moment. His hands were shaking, but he forced them still. "No," he managed to say, his voice rough. "No, you don't have to leave." He couldn't send her away. Not now. Not when he had 14 years of missing her to make up for, even if he hadn't known he was missing her until this moment. "But the cookies," Lily pointed at the mess on the floor, still trying to make sense of the strange tension in the room. "I'll clean it up," Jack said automatically, though he remained rooted to the spot. His eyes couldn't leave Chloe's face, seeing new similarities with every passing second. The way she stood, slightly turned to one side. The careful way she chose her words. Even the artistic talent she shared with Lily. Hadn't his own mother been an artist before arthritis took that away from her? Chloe stayed in the doorway, caught between staying and fleeing. Her teeth worried at her lower lip, just like Evelyn used to do when she was nervous. The gesture hit Jack like a physical blow, making him realize how many memories he'd locked away, thinking they couldn't hurt him anymore. But they did hurt. They hurt with the weight of all the years he'd missed, all the firsts he'd never seen. Chloe's first steps, first words, first day of school. The weight of Evelyn's silence pressed down on him like a stone. "I'm really sorry," Chloe whispered again, and the tremor in her voice made Jack's heart crack. This wasn't her fault. None of this was her fault. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with 14 years of unspoken truths. Jack stood amid the scattered cookies and broken ceramic, staring at the daughter he never knew he had, while his youngest watched with growing concern, not yet understanding how their world had just changed forever. The iron gates of the Harrington estate loomed before Jack's weathered pickup truck, a stark reminder of the vast difference between his world and Evelyn's. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white with tension. The security guard, noting his arrival, spoke quietly into a radio before waving him through. The long driveway wound through perfectly manicured gardens, leading to a grand Georgian mansion that gleamed in the fading daylight. Jack's boots crunched on the gravel as he stepped out, his reflection distorted in the polished marble steps leading to the entrance. Before he could ring the bell, the heavy oak door swung open. Evelyn stood there, elegant even in casual clothes, her face a mixture of anticipation and worry. "Jack," she said softly, "I've been expecting you." "Were you?" His voice came out rougher than intended. 14 years, Evelyn. 14 years and not a word." She stepped aside, gesturing for him to enter. "Please, come in. We shouldn't have this conversation on the doorstep." The foyer's crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across their faces as Jack followed her through to a warm study. Books lined the walls and a fire crackled in the hearth. But he barely noticed the luxury surrounding him. His mind was fixed on one thing, the truth he'd discovered just hours ago. "Sit, please." Evelyn motioned to a leather armchair, but Jack remained standing. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Is she my daughter?" Evelyn's shoulders slumped slightly, and she sank into the nearest chair. "Yes," she said simply, meeting his gaze. "She's yours." The confirmation hit Jack like a physical blow. He steadied himself against the mantelpiece, watching the flames dance in the fireplace. "Why?" The single word carried the weight of 14 years of lost time. "My parents," Evelyn began, her voice trembling slightly. "When they found out I was pregnant, they were horrified. A teenage romance with the mechanic's son? It would ruin their social standing." She laughed bitterly. "They sent me away that very night, to a private school across the country. By the time I came back, you'd left town for college." Jack remembered that summer vividly. Their stolen moments behind the old drive-in theater, plans whispered under starlit skies. Then suddenly, Evelyn had vanished. No goodbye, no explanation. Just empty spaces where she used to be. "You could have found me," he said, turning to face her. "After you turned 18, after you inherited everything, you had the resources." "I was a coward," Evelyn admitted, tears gathering in her eyes. "By then, I'd heard you'd married Sarah. You seemed happy. I didn't want to destroy that with my truth." She paused, wiping her eyes. "Then, I heard about the accident, about Sarah. But by then Chloe was older, and I didn't know how to bridge that gap." Jack sank into the chair opposite her, his anger giving way to a profound sadness. "She's been right here, all this time. My daughter, growing up without me. She's known about you for years," Evelyn said quietly. "I never hid who her father was. I have albums full of newspaper clippings about your racing career, about your garage. She's followed your life from afar. But I couldn't follow hers." Jack's voice cracked. "Her first words, first steps, first day of school. I missed everything." Evelyn reached for a leather-bound album on the side table. "Not everything," she said, opening it. "I documented it all, hoping someday I'd find the courage to share it with you." Jack's hands trembled as he took the album. Photos of a newborn Chloe, her first birthday, riding a bike with training wheels. His daughter's life, captured in moments he should have been part of. "When her bike broke down at your garage," Evelyn continued, "I knew it wasn't coincidence, it was fate, giving me a second chance to make things right." "Fate," Jack echoed, staring at a photo of Chloe at age 7, gap-toothed and beaming. She had his smile. How had he not seen it before? Does she hate me?" "No," Evelyn said firmly. "She understands it wasn't your fault. She's been wanting to tell you since that first day at the garage, but I asked her to wait until I found the right moment." Jack closed the album gently. "And you thought letting her whisper it to Lily was the right moment?" Evelyn flushed. "That wasn't planned. Chloe, she's impulsive sometimes. Like you used to be." The comment struck a chord of memory. Summer nights, spontaneous adventures. A younger version of himself who thought love could conquer anything. Now here they were, 14 years later, with a daughter who had his smile and his impulsive spirit. "What happens now?" Jack asked, standing slowly. "Whatever you want," Evelyn replied. "Whatever's best for both girls. They've already formed a bond, perhaps that's another sign." Jack moved toward the door, his mind whirling with implications, possibilities, responsibilities. "I need time," he said, "to process this, to figure out how to tell Lily, to—" "Of course," Evelyn stood, following him to the foyer. "Take all the time you need. We've waited 14 years, a few more days won't hurt." At the door, Jack paused. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for keeping those albums. For making sure she knew about me, even if I couldn't know about her." The drive home seemed surreal, his truck navigating familiar roads while his world shifted on its axis. The stars above twinkled indifferently, unchanged by the revelations below. Jack drove in silence, his heart full of new emotions he couldn't yet name. As he passed the town limits sign, he realized with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. The morning sun cast long shadows across Jack's garage as he worked under the hood of Mrs. Peterson's old Chevrolet. The familiar smell of motor oil and grease filled the air, giving him comfort after a sleepless night of processing yesterday's revelation. Lily sat at her usual spot in the corner, humming quietly as she drew with her crayons. The sound of tires on gravel made Jack look up. His heart skipped when he recognized Evelyn's black car pulling into the driveway. The back door opened first, and Chloe bounded out, carrying a backpack covered in artistic doodles. Evelyn emerged more slowly, elegant even in simple jeans and a blouse. "Lily!" Chloe called out, waving enthusiastically. Lily's face lit up at the sight of her new friend, and Jack realized with a pang her half-sister. "Can I stay and play today?" Chloe asked, directing the question at both Jack and her mother. "I brought my art supplies, and Mom said it was okay if you agreed." Jack wiped his hands on a shop rag, buying time to steady his voice. "That's fine with me," he managed, glancing at Evelyn. "If you're sure?" "Very sure," Evelyn said softly. "I thought perhaps we could talk while they play." The girls didn't wait for further discussion. Lily grabbed Chloe's hand and pulled her toward the small office where she kept her toys and drawing supplies. Their excited chatter filled the garage with life. "I need to finish this repair first," Jack said, gesturing to the Chevrolet. "But there's coffee in the office if you'd like some." To his surprise, Evelyn rolled up her sleeves. "I remember how you take your coffee," she said, heading for the office. "Black with 1 sugar, right?" Jack's hands stilled on the wrench. After 14 years, she still remembered that detail. He heard her moving around in the office, the familiar sounds of coffee being poured. When she returned with 2 mugs, the girls had spread their art supplies across Lily's small desk, heads bent together over a shared drawing. "Thank you," Jack said, accepting the coffee. They stood in awkward silence, watching their daughters. "She has your smile," Evelyn said quietly. "Lily, it's exactly like yours used to be when we'd meet at Miller's Pond." The mention of their old meeting spot broke something loose in Jack's chest. "Miller's Pond," he echoed. "I haven't been there in years. Remember the tire swing?" Evelyn's eyes grew distant. You promised to teach me to flip off it into the water, but I never got brave enough. You were plenty brave, Jack countered, surprising himself with a small smile. Just smart enough not to risk breaking your neck. Their shared laughter felt rusty but genuine. Jack turned back to the car, and Evelyn leaned against the workbench, watching him work. The silence felt less heavy now. You're still good with your hands, she observed. I remember watching you fix that old motorcycle of yours. The Indian Scout. Jack nodded. Spent a whole summer rebuilding that engine, and then you took me for a ride, and my father nearly had a heart attack when we came roaring up the driveway. Jack's hands moved automatically through the familiar motions of the repair as memories surfaced. Your mom made us hot chocolate, though. Said if we were going to be rebellious, we might as well be warm about it. Evelyn's laugh caught slightly. She liked you, you know. Both my parents did, really. They just had bigger plans for you, Jack finished. He closed the hood with a gentle click. I figured that out when you stopped coming to the pond. I wanted to tell you about Chloe, Evelyn said softly. Every day for 14 years I wanted to tell you. Before Jack could respond, Lily's voice piped up from the office. Daddy, we're hungry! The interruption released some of the tension. Jack checked his watch, surprised to find it was already late afternoon. How about dinner? He suggested, looking at Evelyn. Nothing fancy. But you're welcome to stay. Can we, Mom? Chloe asked, hope bright in her eyes. We'd love to, Evelyn said. An hour later, they gathered around Jack's small kitchen table. He'd thrown together spaghetti and meatballs, using his mother's old recipe. The girls had set the table, mixing Jack's plain plates with fancy cloth napkins Evelyn produced from her purse. At first, the only sounds were forks against plates and awkward requests to pass the Parmesan. But then Lily dropped a meatball that rolled across the floor, and Chloe's startled laugh broke the tension. Soon they were all sharing stories: Lily's adventures in learning to ride a bike, Chloe's first art show at school, simple moments that bridged the years of separation. By the time Jack served ice cream for dessert, the kitchen rang with genuine laughter. Evelyn insisted on helping with dishes, and their daughters sat shoulder to shoulder at the table, drawing on paper napkins and giggling like they'd known each other forever. Jack watched them all, his heart full of emotions he couldn't quite name. Here, in his modest kitchen, with mismatched chairs and walls that needed painting, something that felt remarkably like family was taking shape. It wasn't perfect, there were still hurt feelings to address and complications to figure out, but for now, the sound of shared laughter seemed like enough of a start. The following week brought changes to Jack's routine that he never could have imagined. Instead of quiet mornings with just Lily, their days now sparkled with unexpected moments of joy as their small family of two expanded to include Evelyn and Chloe. On Tuesday afternoon, Jack watched from a park bench as Lily and Chloe chased each other around the playground. Evelyn sat beside him, her designer dress looking oddly out of place against the weathered wood. They're getting along so well, Evelyn said softly, her eyes following the girls. Yeah, Jack agreed, still getting used to these casual conversations with her. Lily's always wanted a sister. Mrs. Henderson from the quilting circle walked past, her eyes narrowing as she took in the scene. Jack felt himself tense, but Evelyn either didn't notice or chose to ignore the scrutiny. At the grocery store on Thursday, Jack pushed the cart while Lily rode on the front, her legs dangling. They turned down the cereal aisle to find Evelyn and Chloe already there, comparing nutrition labels. Dad, Lily waved excitedly. Can we get the kind Chloe likes? Several shoppers paused to stare at the unlikely group, the town mechanic and the billionaire discussing breakfast cereals. But something had shifted in Evelyn. Instead of her usual polished reserve, she laughed openly at Lily's enthusiasm, reaching out to tickle the little girl's knee. Remember what the doctor said about sugar? Jack reminded gently. I know a healthy brand, Evelyn offered. Chloe loves it, and it's mostly natural ingredients. To Jack's surprise, she didn't just point it out. She actually climbed up on her tiptoes to reach it herself, her heel slipping slightly. Without thinking, he steadied her with a hand at her elbow. The touch sent a jolt through him, familiar yet new. Sunday morning found them all at First Baptist Church. Jack had attended since Lily was born, finding comfort in the familiar hymns and friendly faces. When Evelyn walked in with Chloe, wearing a simple blue dress instead of her usual designer clothes, the usual pre-service chatter died down. But Evelyn didn't retreat to the back pew as Jack expected. Instead, she joined the choir practice before service, her clear voice blending with Mrs. Wilson's weathered alto and teenage Jenny's soprano. Jack watched, transfixed, as she swayed slightly to the music, eyes closed in concentration. "Your mom has a beautiful voice," he whispered to Chloe, who beamed with pride. After service, Evelyn surprised everyone by volunteering to help with the church bake sale. She rolled up her sleeves alongside the other women, kneading dough and sharing recipes as if she'd done it all her life. "I used to bake with my grandmother," she explained, to a wide-eyed Mrs. Thompson. Before, everything changed. She made the best snickerdoodles in 3 counties. Jack recognized something in her voice then, a longing for simpler times, before wealth had built walls around her life. It was the same Evelyn he'd known all those years ago, the one who'd sit on his garage workbench and dream about their future. The town's skepticism began to crack, slowly but surely. When Evelyn showed up at the emergency town council meeting about the condemned playground, people expected her to write a check and leave. Instead, she stayed for 3 hours, offering practical suggestions about community fundraising and volunteering to coordinate with local businesses. "We don't need to tear it down," she insisted, passion in her voice. "These children deserve a safe place to play, and together we can make it happen." Jack watched her gesture animatedly as she explained her ideas, her usual perfect hair slightly mussed, cheeks flushed with excitement. This was the real Evelyn, he realized, not the polished billionaire from magazine covers, but a woman who cared deeply and wasn't afraid to work hard for what mattered. The girls' friendship deepened with each passing day. Chloe taught Lily new drawing techniques, while Lily showed Chloe how to make mud pies in the backyard. Their laughter became the soundtrack to Jack's days, filling spaces he hadn't even realized were empty. One evening, Jack came in from the garage to find an unexpected scene in his kitchen. Evelyn sat at his worn table, her designer blazer draped over the chair back, helping Lily with her math homework. Chloe was stirring something that smelled like spaghetti sauce on the stove, humming softly. "See?" Evelyn was saying, using colored pencils to illustrate the problem. "If you have 3 groups of 4, that's the same as 4 groups of 3. It's called the commutative property." Lily's face scrunched in concentration, then suddenly brightened. "Oh, I get it now." Evelyn's smile was warm and genuine, nothing like the careful ones she wore in public. She high-fived Lily, then noticed Jack standing in the doorway. Their eyes met over Lily's head, and something unspoken passed between them. Jack couldn't help but smile at the scene before him. His humble kitchen, with its chipped counters and mismatched chairs, had never felt more like home. Evelyn fit there somehow, her presence adding warmth rather than highlighting what was missing. Lily showed him her completed homework proudly. Evelyn explained it really good, Dad. Can she help me with homework more often?" The slip made everyone freeze for a moment, but Evelyn recovered first, smoothly standing to check on Chloe's sauce. Jack watched her move around his kitchen with surprising ease, directing Chloe to add a pinch more oregano, reaching for plates in the correct cabinet as if she'd always known where they were. The kitchen table that had seemed too big and empty since his wife died now felt just right with all 4 of them around it. Lily and Chloe chatted about their art projects. Evelyn listened intently, and Jack found himself memorizing every detail of this moment, the way the evening sun slanted through his windows, the smell of garlic bread in the oven, the sound of his daughter's voices mixing together in perfect harmony. The summer evening wrapped around Jack's modest porch like a warm blanket. Fireflies danced in the yard, their gentle lights blinking like tiny stars fallen to earth. Jack and Evelyn sat side by side on the weathered wooden swing, their shoulders not quite touching, but close enough to feel the whisper of each other's presence. Inside, both girls slept soundly after a day filled with laughter and games. The sound of crickets and distant frogs created a peaceful symphony that made the moment feel almost magical. "I never thought I'd be sitting here like this," Evelyn said softly, her eyes following the fireflies. "Back on this porch, after all these years." Jack's hands rested on his knees as he gently pushed the swing with one foot. A lot's changed since then. And yet, some things haven't changed at all. Evelyn smiled, gesturing to the old maple tree in the yard. That tree still has the same crooked branch where we used to sit and talk about our dreams. Jack chuckled, the memory washing over him like a warm wave. You wanted to travel the world, help people somehow. I just wanted to fix cars, and maybe own my own garage someday. Simple dreams aren't lesser dreams, Jack. Evelyn turned to face him, her expression earnest. Sometimes I think they're the most beautiful ones. Look at you now. You've built something real here. Something that matters. And you? Did you get to help people like you wanted? Evelyn's fingers played with the edge of her casual summer dress, so different from her usual elegant attire. I try. The foundation does good work, but sometimes. She paused, searching for words. Sometimes it feels empty, you know? Like throwing money at problems isn't the same as really connecting with people. Jack nodded, understanding more than she might expect. That's why you've been showing up at all these community events lately? Partly. Evelyn's voice grew quieter. But mostly because I want to be part of this world again. Your world. The real world, where people know their neighbors and help each other just because it's the right thing to do. The swing creaked gently as they rocked, a comfortable silence falling between them. A firefly drifted close, and Evelyn reached out, letting it land briefly on her finger before it flew away. I have so many regrets, Jack, she whispered, her voice catching slightly. Not telling you about Chloe, letting my parents push me away, choosing a life of luxury over what we had? Jack finished softly. She nodded, wiping quickly at her eyes. I was young and scared. My parents made it sound like I'd be ruining everyone's lives if I stayed. They said you'd never be able to provide the kind of life they wanted for me and the baby. Jack's jaw tightened, old hurt mixing with fresh understanding. And now I know that the best life isn't about designer clothes or fancy cars. It's about having people who truly care about you. Watching Chloe these past few weeks, seeing how she lights up around you and Lily, that's worth more than any amount of money in my accounts. Jack turned to look at her. Really look at her. Beyond the elegant clothes and perfect makeup, he saw the same girl he'd fallen in love with all those years ago, the one who used to laugh at his terrible jokes and dream big dreams under summer stars. Do you ever wonder? He started, then stopped, unsure if he should continue. All the time, Evelyn replied, understanding his unspoken question. I wonder about every path not taken, every moment we could have had. Their eyes met in the soft darkness, and Jack felt his heart speed up. The air seemed to grow thick with unspoken words and years of buried feelings. Maybe some paths aren't completely closed, he found himself saying, his voice rough with emotion. Maybe sometimes life gives us second chances. Evelyn's hand found his on the swing between them, her fingers warm against his work-roughened palm. Do you believe in second chances, Jack? He looked down at their joined hands, then back up at her face, illuminated by the porch light. I'm starting to. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility. Then, slowly, as if drawn by some invisible force, they leaned toward each other. Their lips met in a kiss that was gentle and hesitant at first, like a question being asked. But as Evelyn's hand came up to rest against his cheek, the kiss deepened, carrying echoes of their past and whispers of a possible future. When they finally pulled apart, Jack's heart was racing. Joy bubbled up inside him, but it was tempered by a flutter of fear. This wasn't just about them anymore. They had 2 daughters to think about, a whole community watching their every move, and 2 very different worlds to try to bridge. Evelyn seemed to read his thoughts. She squeezed his hand gently before standing up, smoothing her dress with slightly trembling hands. I should go, she said softly, though her eyes said she wanted to stay. Jack stood too, walking her to her car in the driveway. They both knew things had shifted tonight, that the careful dance between past and present had taken on new meaning. The fireflies continued their silent light show in the yard, witnesses to a moment that felt both like an ending and a beginning. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the fairgrounds as excited chatter and cheerful music filled the air. Jack stood at the entrance, his weathered hands holding 2 small paper tickets while Evelyn paid for her and Chloe's admission. The smell of cotton candy and buttered popcorn wafted through the warm summer breeze. "Daddy, can we go on the Ferris wheel first?" Lily tugged at his sleeve, her eyes wide with wonder at the towering ride that dominated the skyline. "Me too," Chloe chimed in, bouncing on her toes. Though she usually tried to act more grown-up, the fair seemed to bring out the child in her. Jack glanced at Evelyn, who nodded with a warm smile. "Of course, girls. Let's get in line." As they walked through the fairgrounds, familiar faces turned to watch them pass. Mrs. Peterson, who ran the local bakery, waved hesitantly. Old Mr. Johnson, sitting at his usual spot by the lemonade stand, tipped his hat with a knowing smile. The line for the Ferris wheel moved slowly, giving the girls time to chat about which rides they wanted to try next. Jack couldn't help but notice how naturally they had bonded, as if they'd known each other their whole lives. Chloe's designer sneakers might have cost more than Lily's entire wardrobe, but when they laughed together, none of that mattered. "I haven't been on one of these in years," Evelyn admitted as they climbed into their car. The metal creaked slightly as the wheel began to turn. "Me neither," Jack replied, steadying Lily as she pressed her face against the protective barrier. "Not since the summer fair 15 years ago," Evelyn finished softly. Their eyes met briefly before both girls squealed as the car swung gently at the top. From their elevated vantage point, the entire fairground sprawled out below them like a colorful patchwork quilt. The setting sun painted everything in warm golden hues, and Jack felt something settle in his chest, a feeling of rightness he hadn't experienced in a long time. After the Ferris wheel, they wandered through the carnival games. Jack won a stuffed penguin for Lily at the ring toss, while Evelyn surprised everyone by showing remarkable skill at the balloon dart throw, earning Chloe a giant teddy bear. "Where did you learn to throw like that?" Jack asked, impressed. Evelyn laughed, a sound that made his heart skip. "I may have practiced in my college dorm room. The walls still have the dart marks to prove it." They stopped at a picnic table laden with fair treats: funnel cakes dusted with powdered sugar, corn dogs, and fresh lemonade. Jack watched as Evelyn delicately tried to eat her funnel cake without getting sugar all over her designer blouse, failing miserably and laughing at herself. "You've got a little." He gestured to her nose, where a spot of white powder stood out. "Oh!" She reached up with a napkin, missing completely. "Here, let me." Without thinking, Jack reached across and gently brushed the sugar away with his thumb. The touch lingered for a moment longer than necessary, and he felt the warmth of her skin beneath his fingers. Sarah Miller, who had been one of the loudest voices gossiping about them weeks ago, passed by their table. This time, instead of whispering behind her hand, she stopped and smiled. "Beautiful evening for the fair, isn't it? Your girls are absolutely precious together." The simple comment, delivered without a hint of judgment, felt like a shift in the wind. Throughout the evening, more townspeople approached them. Tom from the hardware store complimented Jack on his recent work on his truck, while his wife cooed over how well-behaved both girls were. As darkness fell, the fairgrounds lit up with strings of twinkling lights. The girls begged to go on more rides, their energy seemingly endless. Jack held both their hands as they walked between attractions, feeling a surge of pride when Chloe called him Dad without hesitation. They found a spot on the grassy hill where many families had gathered to watch the fireworks. Lily sat in Jack's lap, while Chloe leaned against Evelyn's shoulder. The first boom echoed across the sky, followed by a cascade of red and gold sparks. "Beautiful," Evelyn whispered, her face illuminated by the changing colors above. Jack looked at her, then at their daughters, all bathed in the magical light of the fireworks. The past few weeks had changed everything. His quiet life as a single dad, his careful isolation from town gossip, his guarded heart. Yet somehow, this new reality felt more real than anything had in years. He leaned closer to Evelyn, his voice soft enough that only she could hear. "This feels like home." Above them, the fireworks continued to paint the night sky in brilliant bursts of color, reflecting in the eyes of their newfound family. Monday morning arrived with a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Jack was bent over the engine of Mrs. Thompson's old Buick, his hands covered in grease, when he heard footsteps approaching on the concrete floor of his garage. "Jack Turner?" a crisp voice called out. Jack straightened up, wiping his hands on the red shop rag tucked into his belt. A man in a pressed suit stood there, holding a small notepad. Everything about him screamed city, from his shiny leather shoes to his perfectly styled hair. "That's me," Jack replied, already feeling defensive. "If you're looking for car repairs, I'm booked until Thursday." The man's thin lips curved into what might have been a smile. "Actually, I'm Dennis Walsh from the Daily Herald. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your relationship with Evelyn Harrington." Jack's stomach tightened. "No comment," he said firmly, turning back to the engine. "Come now, Mr. Turner. The public has a right to know about this. Fascinating development. A small-town mechanic and one of the country's wealthiest women?" Walsh's pen hovered over his notepad. "How exactly did you manage that?" "I fix cars," Jack said flatly. "That's all there is to know about me. Sources say you're after her money. Care to comment on that?" Jack's wrench slipped, clanging against the engine block. "Get out of my garage," he said quietly, his voice tight with anger. Walsh raised his eyebrows but backed away. "No problem. I have enough for my story anyway." 2 days later, the article appeared. Jack first noticed it when old Mr. Peterson came in to cancel his regular oil change appointment. The elderly man couldn't quite meet Jack's eyes as he mumbled something about finding another mechanic. Shortly after, his phone started ringing with more cancellations. Each call felt like a personal blow, especially from customers he'd served for years. By lunchtime, someone had left a copy of the Daily Herald on his workbench. The headline made his blood run cold. "Small-town gold digger sets sights on billionaire widow." Jack's hands shook as he read the article. Walsh had twisted everything, painting him as a calculating opportunist who had deliberately orchestrated meetings with Evelyn's daughter to get close to her fortune. The reporter had dug up details about Jack's modest income, his mortgage payments, even his late wife's medical bills. The worst part was the quotes from anonymous town sources, describing him as a shrewd manipulator hiding behind an honest mechanic's facade. People he'd known for years, people whose children played with Lily, had apparently been all too willing to share their suspicions with the press. The morning dragged on in painful silence. No new customers came in. The regular rhythm of work that usually filled his days was replaced by the hollow echo of his footsteps in the empty garage. Around noon, Linda from the diner brought lunch for him and Lily, as she often did. Her eyes were full of sympathy as she set down the paper bags. "Don't let them get to you, Jack," she said softly. "Those of us who really know you aren't fooled by that trash." But the whispers followed him everywhere. At the gas station, conversations stopped when he walked in. At the grocery store, mothers pulled their children closer as he passed, as if being a gold digger was somehow contagious. Lily noticed something was wrong. She was too young to understand the article, but she picked up on the tension in her father's shoulders, the way people avoided looking at them on the street. "Why isn't anyone bringing their cars to fix?" she asked from her usual spot in the corner of the garage, her coloring books spread out on her small desk. Jack tried to smile. "Just a slow day, sweetheart." But it wasn't just a slow day. By closing time, 3 more regular customers had called to cancel their appointments. Each call chipped away at Jack's pride, at the reputation he'd spent years building. That evening, sitting at their kitchen table, Jack finally allowed himself to read the article again. Each word felt like a personal attack, not just on him but on everything he stood for. The paper crinkled under his tightening grip. Lily looked up from her homework, her small face pinched with worry. "Daddy, are you okay?" With a sudden surge of anger, Jack slammed the newspaper down on the table, making the salt shaker jump. Lily flinched at the noise, her eyes wide and concerned. The look on his daughter's face immediately made him regret his outburst. She sat there, pencil frozen above her math worksheet, watching him with those worried eyes that seemed too old for her 8 years. The iron gates of the Harrington estate loomed before Jack's truck like silent judges. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight, his knuckles turned white. The newspaper lay crumpled on the passenger seat, its harsh headline still burning in his mind. Jack pulled up to the mansion's circular driveway, his old pickup truck looking desperately out of place among the manicured gardens and marble fountains. Before he could even step out, Evelyn emerged from the front doors, her face drawn with concern. "Jack, I've been trying to call you," she said, hurrying down the steps. Her usual composure was rattled, her designer dress wrinkled from a day of stress. "Yeah, well, I've been busy dealing with canceled appointments and sideways looks from people I've known my whole life." His voice came out harder than he intended, but the hurt was too fresh. Evelyn reached for his arm, but Jack stepped back. "We can fix this," she insisted. "I'll make a statement. Clear your name." "Clear my name?" Jack's laugh was bitter. "That's exactly the problem, Evelyn. In your world, everything can be fixed with money or influence. But in mine, trust and reputation mean everything." They stood in the gathering dusk, the carefully maintained garden at odds with the storm brewing between them. Through the mansion's windows, Jack caught a glimpse of Chloe watching them, her face worried. "This isn't about money," Evelyn said softly. "This is about us, about our family." "Family?" Jack cut in. "Look around you, Evelyn. This isn't my world. It never was. Every time I step into it, something gets poisoned." He gestured at the sprawling estate. "Your wealth is like a spotlight that brings out the worst in people. And now my daughter." His voice cracked. "Lily is strong, Jack. She takes after you." Evelyn stepped closer, her eyes pleading. "Love is stronger than all of this. We can weather this storm together. You don't understand." Jack ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Lily came home crying today. The other kids at school, they're calling her names, saying her dad is just trying to get rich quick. She's 8 years old, Evelyn. 8. Evelyn's face paled. "We can send her to a different school, somewhere." "See? That's exactly what I mean." Jack's voice rose. "You think throwing money at problems will make them disappear? But this is our home. These are our people. Or at least they were before—" He stopped, the words catching in his throat. "Before me," Evelyn finished quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. In the distance, a security guard patrolled the perimeter, his flashlight beam sweeping across perfectly trimmed hedges. "I can't do this," Jack finally said, his voice heavy with defeat. "I can't give Lily a life where she's constantly ridiculed, where every achievement is questioned because people think her dad is just riding on someone else's coattails." "Jack, please," tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. "What about Chloe? What about us?" The mention of Chloe twisted like a knife in Jack's chest. "I'll always be her father. But this, us, it was a beautiful dream, Evelyn. But that's all it was, a dream." Evelyn's tears fell freely now. "So you're just giving up? After everything we've built?" "I'm protecting what little I have left." Jack's voice was firm despite the pain crushing his chest. "My daughter's happiness, my integrity. It's all I've got." He turned away, unable to bear the sight of her tears any longer. Behind him, he heard Evelyn's quiet sobs, each one striking his heart like a hammer. "I love you," she whispered. Jack paused at his truck door, his hand trembling on the handle. "Sometimes love isn't enough," he managed to say, before climbing in and starting the engine. The drive back to town was a blur. Jack found himself at his garage, though he couldn't remember consciously deciding to go there. The familiar smell of oil and metal usually brought comfort, but tonight it felt hollow. He moved through the empty workspace like a ghost, mechanically checking locks and turning off lights. Each shadow seemed to mock him, reminding him of Chloe's drawings pinned to the wall, of Evelyn's laughter echoing off these same walls just days ago. The last light clicked off, plunging the garage into darkness. Jack stood in the doorway, key in hand, feeling the weight of everything he'd just lost. His chance at love, his daughter's sister, a family that, for one brief shining moment, had felt whole. The key turned in the lock with a final, devastating click. Jack rested his forehead against the cold metal door, alone in the night, his heart as empty as the darkened garage behind him. The garage echoed with the metallic clanks of wrenches and the whir of power tools. Jack Turner worked beneath a rusty sedan, letting the familiar sounds of his work drown out his thoughts. Grease stained his hands black, and sweat dampened his shirt in the late afternoon heat. He'd been taking on extra repairs lately, anything to keep busy, to keep from thinking about her. A week had crawled by since that night at the estate. 7 days of avoiding familiar streets where he might see her car. 7 nights of dinner for 2 instead of 4 at his small kitchen table. The silence felt heavier now than it ever had before. "Dad?" Lily's voice carried from her usual spot at the small desk in the corner. "Can you help me with this drawing?" Jack slid out from under the car, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "Sure, sweetheart. Just give me a minute to clean up." At the sink, he scrubbed his hands until the water ran clear, stealing glances at his daughter. She hunched over her sketchbook, her shoulders tight, her usual bounce missing. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, making her look older than her 8 years. He pulled up a chair beside her. "What are you working on?" Lily's pencil moved slowly across the paper, sketching 4 figures holding hands. His chest tightened as he recognized who they were supposed to be. "It's for Chloe," she said quietly. "We trade pictures at lunch sometimes." Jack's throat felt dry. "You see her at school?" Lily nodded, adding details to the smallest figure's pigtails. "She sits with me sometimes. When the other kids aren't being mean about." She trailed off, erasing a line with more force than necessary. "About what, honey?" "About you and Miss Evelyn. They say stupid things." Lily's lip trembled. "Tommy Barnes said you were just trying to get rich. But that's not true. You're the best dad ever. You help people all the time and never ask for money." Jack pulled her into a hug, feeling her small frame shake with suppressed tears. "Don't listen to them, Lily Pad. Kids can be cruel sometimes when they don't understand things." "I miss them," she whispered into his shirt. "Chloe's like my sister now. And Miss Evelyn." She hiccuped. "She made really good pancakes." Jack closed his eyes, remembering Sunday mornings with all of them crowded in his tiny kitchen. Evelyn in her silk blouse, somehow managing to flip perfect pancakes while looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Chloe teaching Lily how to make chocolate chip smiley faces on each one. The memory hurt like a physical wound. That evening, after a quiet dinner of mac and cheese, Jack sent Lily up to get ready for bed. He stayed downstairs longer than necessary, organizing his toolbox and checking the locks twice. Anything to keep moving, to keep from thinking about the empty spaces in his life. As he passed Lily's room, he heard it. Soft sniffles muffled by her pillow. He'd heard the same sound every night this week, pretending not to notice, telling himself she just needed time to adjust. But tonight, it broke something in him. Jack stood in the doorway, watching his daughter's shoulders shake in the dim glow of her nightlight. She clutched her favorite stuffed rabbit, the one Chloe had won for her at the fair, and tried to muffle her tears. "Lily," he said softly. She stiffened, quickly wiping her eyes. "I'm okay, Daddy. Just tired." Jack crossed the room and knelt beside her bed. In the soft light, she looked so much like her mother, it made his heart ache. The same gentle spirit, the same capacity for love that seemed too big for such a small person. "It's okay to cry," he said, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. "I know you miss them. He swallowed hard. "I miss them too." Lily rolled over to face him, her cheeks wet with tears. "Then why can't we see them anymore? Is it because of what people are saying? Because I don't care what they say." Jack took her small hand in his. "It's complicated, sweetie. Sometimes grown-ups. We make choices thinking we're protecting the people we love, even when those choices hurt. But you always say running away from problems doesn't fix them," Lily pointed out, her voice wobbling. "That's what you told me when I wanted to quit soccer because Jenny was being mean." Jack almost smiled. Trust his daughter to throw his own wisdom back at him. "You're right. But this is different. Miss Evelyn's world and our world, they're just too far apart." "That's silly," Lily declared with the simple logic of a child. "Love doesn't care about stuff like that. That's what you told me when we read Cinderella." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, and Jack gathered her close, letting her cry into his shoulder. He rocked her gently, like he used to when she was smaller, when a hug from Dad could fix any problem. "Things will get better," he promised, his voice rough. "I know it hurts right now, but it will get better." The words felt hollow even as he said them. How could things get better when half his family was missing? When his daughter cried herself to sleep missing her sister? When every morning he woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there? Lily's breathing eventually evened out, exhaustion winning over sorrow. Jack tucked the blankets around her, making sure her rabbit was secure in her arms. He brushed a kiss against her forehead, his heart heavy with the knowledge that he couldn't fix this hurt, couldn't make it better with a Band-Aid or a bedtime story. Standing in the doorway, watching his daughter sleep, Jack felt the weight of his decision press down on him like a physical thing. He'd thought he was protecting her from ridicule, from the harsh spotlight that came with Evelyn's wealth. But maybe, just maybe, he'd been protecting himself instead. Thunder crackled across the darkening sky as Jack Turner finished securing the last loose item around his garage. The wind had picked up considerably in the past hour, whipping debris through the streets and rattling windows with increasing fury. He'd just gotten Lily settled at Mrs. Peterson's house next door. The elderly neighbor had offered to watch her when the weather alerts started coming in. The first real gust hit like a freight train, bending trees and sending trash cans rolling down Main Street. Jack watched from his garage doorway as the sky turned an ominous shade of green. The tornado sirens began their eerie wail just as the first drops of rain pelted the pavement. "Everyone inside!" he shouted to a couple hurrying past. They ducked into his garage just as hail started hammering down, some pieces as big as golf balls. The storm's intensity grew by the minute, wind howling through the streets like a wild animal. Through the sheets of rain, Jack spotted the old diner's sign swaying dangerously. Before he could move, a massive gust tore it loose, sending it crashing through the restaurant's front window. The sound of breaking glass was lost in the roar of the storm. Hours seemed to pass, though his watch showed only 45 minutes had gone by when the worst finally passed. As the wind died down and the rain settled into a steady drizzle, Jack stepped out to survey the damage. His heart sank at what he saw. Main Street looked like a war zone. The diner's facade was demolished, its window gone, and water pouring inside. The church's roof had partially collapsed, leaving its wooden beams exposed to the elements. Fallen trees blocked several streets, and loose power lines dangled dangerously. Without hesitation, Jack pulled out his phone and started making calls. "Tom? Get your chainsaw and meet me at the church. Sarah? Bring whatever tarps you've got. Mike? We need your truck and some extra hands." Within 30 minutes, a small group had gathered in front of the damaged church. Jack quickly organized them into teams, some to clear debris, others to cover the exposed roof with tarps, and another group to help secure the diner. "Watch those power lines," he called out, directing traffic around a fallen telephone pole. "And make sure everyone's wearing gloves." The sound of engines approaching drew his attention. Through the misty rain, he saw a line of trucks pulling up. Contractors and construction workers he recognized from neighboring towns. Word had spread fast, but it was the sleek black car that pulled up next that made his breath catch. Evelyn stepped out, dressed in what had probably been an expensive business suit. She took one look at the scene and immediately rolled up her sleeves. "Where do you need help?" she asked, her designer heels already sinking into the mud. Jack stared for a moment, thrown by her presence. "The diner needs all hands right now. We've got to get the water out before it ruins everything inside." Evelyn nodded and headed straight for the building, not hesitating to wade through puddles that ruined her shoes. Jack watched as she grabbed a push broom and joined the line of people clearing water from the diner floor. The townspeople noticed too. Mrs. Henderson, who'd been one of the loudest gossips about Jack and Evelyn's relationship, stopped mid-sweep to watch the billionaire woman work alongside them. Evelyn caught her staring and simply smiled, asking where she could find more towels. As the night wore on, more volunteers arrived. Jack coordinated the efforts, making sure everyone had what they needed and no one was working in dangerous areas. Every so often his eyes would drift to Evelyn, who worked tirelessly without complaint. Her hair had come loose from its elegant styling, and her clothes were soaked and muddy, but she kept going. Around midnight, she organized hot coffee and sandwiches for everyone, having them delivered from a nearby town that still had power. She didn't just pay for it. She helped distribute the food herself, learning names, and listening to stories about the storm. By 2 in the morning, they'd managed to secure the worst of the damage. The church roof was covered, the diner was mostly dry, and the fallen trees had been cleared from the main roads. Jack stood in the drizzling rain, checking off tasks on his mental list. Across the street, Evelyn was helping Pastor Roberts salvage hymnals from the church, carrying armfuls of books to his car for safekeeping. Her once perfect suit was ruined, her expensive shoes beyond repair. Yet there was something beautiful about her like this, real, raw, and completely present in the moment. Their eyes met across the wreckage-strewn street. Jack felt the walls he'd built around his heart tremble slightly, like the aftershocks of the storm. Here was the woman he'd pushed away, working shoulder to shoulder with his neighbors, asking nothing in return. The sight of her made his chest ache with conflicting emotions: admiration for her strength and humility, fear of the complications her world brought to his, and something deeper he wasn't ready to name. He quickly looked away, focusing instead on securing a loose tarp. But he could still feel her presence, like static electricity in the air after lightning strikes. The physical distance between them felt both too far and not far enough. "Jack?" Tom called from nearby. "We've got another tree down on Oak Street." Grateful for the distraction, Jack gathered his tools and headed toward his truck, trying not to notice how Evelyn's eyes followed his movement. The storm had passed, but its effects lingered, in the damaged buildings, in the mud-streaked streets, and in the complicated tangle of feelings he couldn't quite ignore. Morning sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows of St. Mary's Church Hall, casting colorful shadows across the worn wooden floors. The space buzzed with activity as townspeople gathered, their clothes still bearing traces of yesterday's cleanup efforts. Mud-caked boots and work-stained jeans mingled with Sunday best as everyone squeezed into the available seats. Jack stood near the back, his trusty work jacket showing signs of the previous night's battle against nature. Lily sat beside him, her small hand tucked safely in his. His eyes swept across the room, taking in the familiar faces of neighbors he'd known his whole life. Mayor Thompson stood at the makeshift podium, discussing damage assessments and recovery plans. The storm had left its mark on their small town. The diner's sign lay shattered, the library's roof had partially caved in, and countless homes bore the scars of nature's fury. "And now," the mayor announced, adjusting his glasses, "Mrs. Harrington would like to say a few words." A quiet murmur rippled through the crowd as Evelyn made her way to the front. She looked different from her usual polished self. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore jeans and a plain sweater. There were smudges of dirt on her sleeve, evidence of her hands-on involvement in the cleanup. "Thank you all for coming," Evelyn began, her voice clear and steady. "What I witnessed yesterday wasn't just a community responding to crisis, it was a family coming together, and I need to give credit where it's truly due." She paused, her eyes finding Jack in the crowd. He shifted uncomfortably, wondering what she was about to say. "Jack Turner," she continued, "was the first person to spring into action when the storm hit. While many of us were still processing what had happened, he was already organizing teams, distributing supplies, and making sure everyone was safe." Jack felt his face grow warm as heads turned in his direction. Lily squeezed his hand, beaming up at him with pride. "Some of you might know Jack as the mechanic who can fix any engine," Evelyn went on, her voice growing softer. "Others might know him as the man who never turns away someone in need, even if they can't pay. But what I saw yesterday was the true heart of this town in action." The hall had grown completely silent, every eye fixed either on Evelyn or Jack. He worked through the night, checking on elderly neighbors, securing loose debris, coordinating with emergency services. And he did it all without seeking recognition or reward. Evelyn's voice carried a hint of emotion now. "That's who Jack Turner is. Someone who gives without expecting anything in return." Several people nodded in agreement, including Mrs. Peterson, whose roof Jack had helped patch up in the middle of the storm. "I know there have been rumors," Evelyn acknowledged, addressing the elephant in the room. "Whispers about my presence in town, about my relationship with Jack, and I understand why. I'm an outsider, someone whose world seems very different from yours." She straightened her shoulders, lifting her chin slightly. "But, standing here today, I want to make something clear. This town, these people, this community, this is where I want to build my future. Not in some high-rise apartment or gated mansion, but here, where real values still matter. A collective intake of breath filled the room as Evelyn's gaze locked firmly on Jack. And I want to build that future with you, Jack Turner, because you've shown me what truly matters in life isn't the size of someone's bank account or the car they drive, it's the size of their heart. The hall erupted in spontaneous applause, startling both Jack and Evelyn. Mrs. Peterson wiped away a tear, while old Mr. Jenkins, who'd initially been one of the loudest critics, nodded approvingly. Jack stood rooted to the spot, his heart pounding in his chest. Lily bounced excitedly beside him, while Chloe, who had been sitting with her mother, beamed at him from the front of the hall. The applause continued to grow, filling the sacred space with its thunderous approval. Through it all, Evelyn's eyes remained fixed on Jack's, carrying all the warmth and hope of a new beginning. She didn't move from her spot, didn't try to close the physical distance between them. Instead, she waited, letting her words and her heart bridge the gap she hoped they could finally cross together. The morning sun continued to pour through the stained glass, painting the scene in vibrant hues of red, blue, and gold, as the town that had once whispered in judgment now stood united in celebration of love's simple truth. The evening air carried the fresh scent of rain-washed streets as Jack, Evelyn, and the girls made their way along the quiet sidewalk. Streetlights cast warm circles of light on the wet pavement, and crickets chirped their evening song from nearby gardens. Jack walked beside Evelyn, their shoulders occasionally brushing, while Chloe and Lily followed a few steps behind, whispering and giggling together. Jack's work boots made solid sounds against the concrete, a sharp contrast to Evelyn's lighter footsteps. He glanced at her profile, noting how the soft evening light caught the silver threads in her dark hair. She'd changed from her mud-stained clothes into a simple sweater and jeans, but to Jack, she'd never looked more beautiful. Behind them, Lily's voice carried in a stage whisper. "Do you think they'll finally stop being silly?" "I hope so," Chloe replied, squeezing her sister's hand. "Mom's been so sad without Jack." Jack felt his cheeks warm, knowing the girls were watching their every move. The events of the day had shifted something fundamental in him. Seeing Evelyn work alongside everyone else, her designer clothes ruined as she helped clear debris, had touched him deeply. The town's response to her genuine humility had been equally moving. As they approached the iron gates of Evelyn's estate, Jack's steps slowed. The massive house loomed ahead, its windows glowing warmly in the twilight. Once, this place had intimidated him, represented everything he thought stood between them. Now, he saw it differently. Just a house, not a barrier. They paused at the front porch, where climbing roses framed the entrance. The porch light cast a gentle glow over them all. Jack turned to face Evelyn, his heart hammering in his chest. "Evelyn," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "I've been such a fool." She shook her head, reaching for his hand. "No, Jack, you were protecting your heart and Lily's." "I was afraid," he admitted, looking down at their joined hands. "Afraid of what people would say, afraid of how different our worlds are." He gestured at the grand house behind her. "All this, it scared me, not because of what you have, but because I thought it would always come between us." "Jack Turner," Evelyn said softly, stepping closer. "Do you know what I see when I look at this house? A place that's been empty of real love for too long. A place that only feels like home when you and Lily are here." Behind them, the girls had grown quiet, watching with hopeful expressions. Jack could hear their barely contained excitement, could feel their desire for this moment to bring their fractured family together. "The town's gossip hurt," Jack continued, needing to get everything out, "not because I cared what they thought about me, but because I couldn't bear the thought of Lily facing that every day. And then today, watching you work alongside everyone, ruining your clothes without a second thought." "They were just clothes," Evelyn said with a small laugh. "What matters is being there for the people we care about. This town, your town, needed help. How could I not pitch in?" Jack's free hand came up to cup her cheek. "You amazing woman. You've shown me that love really is enough, that wealth and status don't matter when hearts are true." Evelyn's eyes glistened with tears. "Does this mean you're done pushing me away?" "If you'll still have this stubborn mechanic," Jack whispered, drawing her closer. "Always," Evelyn breathed. And then his lips found hers in a tender kiss that spoke of new beginnings and second chances. The quiet moment was shattered by joyful squeals as Chloe and Lily rushed forward, wrapping their arms around both adults in an enthusiastic group hug. Jack felt Lily's familiar weight against his side and Chloe's nervous, hopeful embrace. He opened his arms wider, including both girls in the moment. "Does this mean we're really a family now?" Lily asked, her voice muffled against Jack's jacket. "Yes, sweetheart," Evelyn answered, her hand gentle on Lily's hair. "If that's what you want." "It's what we all want," Chloe declared firmly, her arms tightening around them. Standing there on the porch, surrounded by the three people he loved most in the world, Jack felt the last of his fears melt away. The mansion behind them no longer seemed like a symbol of what divided them, but rather a place where their family could grow together. The town's gossip didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the love they shared and the future they could build together. In that moment, under the warm porch light with crickets serenading them and stars beginning to peek through the evening sky, they weren't a billionaire and a mechanic, or two girls from different worlds. They were simply a family, united at last by love that had overcome every obstacle in its path. The girls continued to hug them tight, their joy infectious and pure. Jack met Evelyn's eyes over their daughters' heads and saw in them the same happiness that filled his own heart. This was what he'd been searching for all along, not just love, but belonging, acceptance, and the chance to build something beautiful together. The weekend sun cast a golden glow over Jack's backyard, where folding tables dotted the grass, laden with potluck dishes and checkered tablecloths. The savory aroma of grilled burgers mingled with the sweet scent of Mary Thompson's famous apple pie. Children darted between clusters of chatting adults, their laughter carried on the warm afternoon breeze. Jack stood at the grill, spatula in hand, watching the scene before him with quiet contentment. He'd never hosted anything like this before, but Evelyn had insisted it was time to properly celebrate their new beginning. The whole town seemed to have shown up, bearing casseroles and warm smiles. "Need any help there?" Tom from the hardware store appeared at his side, offering a fresh plate for the burgers. "Thanks," Jack said, carefully flipping a patty. "Never thought I'd see the day when my tiny yard would hold half the town." Tom chuckled. "Well, things change. Good changes, though." He nodded toward where Evelyn was chatting with a group of local women, looking perfectly at home in jeans and a simple blouse. "She's something special, Jack. We were wrong about her." Near the back porch, Lily and Chloe had set up their art display on two card tables. Construction paper signs decorated with hearts and stars announced, "Our Family Art Show." The girls had spent days preparing their drawings, and their excitement was contagious. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chloe called out, her voice clear and confident, "we'd like to show you our special art collection." The conversations quieted as people gathered around. Lily, usually shy, stood tall next to her sister, beaming with pride. Together, they began presenting their artwork, carefully mounted on colored paper. "This is our whole family at the park," Lily explained, pointing to a crayon drawing of 4 stick figures having a picnic. "See? That's Daddy fixing the swings, and that's Evelyn pushing me on them." Chloe held up her own sketch, more detailed but just as heartfelt. "And this one shows us all at the garage. Mom's learning how to change oil, even though she's terrible at it." The crowd laughed warmly as Evelyn playfully protested. One by one, the girls shared their pictures, the 4 of them making pancakes in Jack's kitchen, playing board games on rainy days, helping clean up after the storm. Each drawing told a story of 2 families becoming one, captured through the honest eyes of children. Mrs. Peterson, who'd once been among the loudest gossips, dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "These are just precious, girls, simply precious." The mayor's wife stepped forward to study a particularly detailed drawing of the town square. "Chloe, honey, you've got quite a talent. You've captured every shop window perfectly." Jack felt a gentle touch on his arm and turned to find Evelyn beside him. She'd slipped away from the crowd to join him at the grill, her eyes shining with emotion as they watched their daughters. "Look at them," she whispered. "They're so proud to show everyone their family. Their real family, Jack added softly, taking her hand. The afternoon flowed on like honey, sweet and unhurried. Old Pete Johnson brought out his guitar, and soon the air was filled with familiar tunes. Children played tag around the yard while their parents swapped stories and shared desserts. Sarah from the diner insisted on taking over grill duty, shooing Jack away. "Go enjoy yourself for once, Jack Turner. We've got this covered." Hand in hand, Jack and Evelyn found a quiet spot on the porch steps. From there, they could watch Chloe teaching Lily and some other kids how to draw cartoon characters. The girls' laughter rang out clear and true, a sound that made Jack's heart feel full to bursting. "Remember when you first came to the garage?" he asked Evelyn. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" She squeezed his hand. "I hoped. I think I've been hoping for this for 14 years. The afternoon sun painted everything in warm gold, catching in Evelyn's hair and making her eyes sparkle. Around them, their neighbors. True neighbors now. Not just customers or gossips, enjoyed the simple pleasure of community. The Thompson twins were examining the girls' artwork with genuine interest. The hardware store owner's wife was sharing her secret potato salad recipe with Evelyn's chef. Even crusty old Mr. Wilson, who rarely left his house, sat in a lawn chair tapping his foot to the music. Jack watched as Chloe and Lily ran past, their arms full of art supplies, heading to show more drawings to a new group of admirers. They moved in perfect sync, like sisters who'd known each other all their lives instead of just a few months. Lily's ponytail bounced with each step, while Chloe's dark curls, so like her mother's, caught the sunlight. A profound sense of peace settled over Jack as he sat there, Evelyn's hand warm in his. The fears that had haunted him, about class differences, about town gossip, about not being enough, seemed to fade away like morning mist. This was what mattered. Two girls who loved each other, a woman who chose love over privilege, and a community that had finally opened its heart to something different. The sound of children playing, the smell of good food, the warmth of acceptance, it all blended into a moment of pure contentment. Jack watched his daughters, both of them, his in all the ways that mattered, as they played with their friends in the late afternoon Sunday. Evelyn leaned her head against his shoulder, and he knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where they all belonged. The early Sunday morning air was crisp and clear, carrying the promise of another beautiful day. Jack fumbled with his keys at the garage door, stifling a yawn. He hadn't slept much, his mind too full of thoughts about how much his life had changed in the past months. The metal door rattled as he lifted it, and there she was, Evelyn Harrington, holding 2 steaming paper cups of coffee. "Good morning," she said softly, a gentle smile lighting up her face. She looked different in the dawn light, more like the young woman he'd known years ago, dressed simply in jeans and a light sweater. Her usual polish was there, but softer somehow. "You're up early," Jack said, accepting one of the cups gratefully. The warmth spread through his calloused hands. "I thought we could walk," Evelyn suggested. "The town's so peaceful at this hour." Jack nodded, and they fell into step together. Their footsteps echoed on the empty sidewalks as they passed the shuttered storefronts of Main Street. Morning dew sparkled on the grass, and birds were just beginning their dawn chorus. "Remember when we used to do this?" Evelyn asked, her voice quiet in the morning stillness. "Before everything changed?" "Back when you worked at the diner," Jack said, memories washing over him. "You'd bring me coffee before your shift." They paused at the town square, where the oak trees cast long shadows across the dewy grass. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves above them. "I've been thinking about gifts," Evelyn said, turning to face him. Her eyes were bright with emotion. "About what really matters in life." Jack took another sip of coffee, waiting. He'd learned that Evelyn sometimes needed time to find the right words. "When I first came back," she continued, "I thought I could fix everything with money. The scholarship for Lily, the donations to the town." She shook her head. "I was so wrong." They started walking again, past the church where they'd stood together during the storm cleanup. The morning sun caught the newly repaired steeple, making it glow. "I've spent years thinking my wealth was both a blessing and a curse," Evelyn said. "That it defined me, but these past months have taught me something different." She stopped walking, touching Jack's arm gently. "What's that?" he asked, looking into her eyes. The greatest gift wasn't anything money could buy, she said softly. It was love finding its way back. It was seeing Chloe and Lily become sisters. It was watching you open your heart again, despite everything. Jack felt his throat tighten with emotion. He remembered the walls he'd built around his heart after losing his wife, how determined he'd been to keep everyone at arm's length. "You gave me back hope," he admitted. "When you showed up at that community meeting covered in mud from helping with storm cleanup." He smiled at the memory. "That's when I knew you were still the same person I fell in love with all those years ago." They walked on, past houses where lights were beginning to flick on as the town slowly awakened. The coffee in their cups had grown cold, forgotten. "I was so afraid," Evelyn confessed. "Afraid that my world would somehow taint what we had. That the money and the publicity would destroy the simple beauty of what we're building." Jack squeezed her hand. "I was scared too. Thought I had to protect Lily from all of it. But watching her with Chloe, seeing how they've bonded." He shook his head, smiling. "They showed us what really matters." They had circled back to the garage now. The sun was rising properly, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A few early customers would be arriving soon, but for now, the world felt like it belonged just to them. "You know what the real gift was?" Evelyn asked, turning to face him in the growing light. "It wasn't the scholarship or anything material. It was family. It was finding our way back to each other. It was seeing our daughters together, watching this town become home again." Jack finally understood. The fears that had haunted him, about class differences, about wealth creating barriers, about not being enough, they seemed to melt away in the morning light. What mattered was standing right here, in this moment, with the woman he loved. "I believe you," he said simply, drawing her close. The words felt like a weight lifting from his chest. "I really do." Evelyn's arms slipped around his waist, and they stood together in the doorway of his garage. The sun continued its slow climb into the sky, washing everything in golden light. Jack could hear the town beginning to wake up around them, car doors slamming in the distance, birds calling, the distant whistle of the early train. They stood there, holding each other, as the new day dawned. The garage that had once felt like just a workplace now felt like the beginning of something more, a place where two separate lives had somehow found their way back together, where a broken bike chain had led to a mended family. The morning light streamed through the open garage door, warming them both as they held each other close. In that moment, Jack knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where he was meant to be. The sun climbed higher, marking the start of their new life together. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Jack Turner, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.